Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for TWiT specials is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com. This is TWiT Live special number 243, recorded Thursday, March 26th, 2015. F8, Day 2.
How you guys doing? You ready to have some fun? We got some good stuff to talk about today, because today we're going to talk about the future. The future we want to create where the world is more open and connected, and what we need to do over the next decade to make that happen.
Welcome to our TWiT special coverage of the F8 Keynote Day 2. On stage right now is Facebook CTO Mike Shrepner, who's going to be talking about and probably introducing virtual reality stuff. We're also expecting Chief Scientist of Oculus, Michael Abrash. And my name is Michael as well. So 3 Michaels here. And so let's listen in to Mike Shrepner introducing Day 2 of the conference.
That can help us navigate the world. That can help all of you deal with the problem you have every day, information overload. And the third thing we need to do is build immersive new technologies that truly give you a sense of presence, that can teleport you to a new place, to create these shared moments, experiences, and memories with the people you care about. If I wanted to send a message to New York 200 years ago, it would take me 10 days on the Pony Express. The railways took that down to 3. The telegraph introduced speed of light communication, instantaneous, coast to coast. The telephone was the first time we had a new natural interface. I picked up the receiver, I spoke into it, instead of transcribing my text to Morse code. And on the other end, the receiver, you can listen to what I'm saying. And you hear not just the words, but the content.
Another history lesson about communication.
Am I happy? Am I sad? All of this millennia of evolution in your brain and your inner ear, allowing you to interpret the meaning of the words by the tone, by speaking into the receiver. Natural interfaces. When we added a camera to that phone, we introduced circa 2015 state-of-the-art intercontinental communication technology, video chat. It gave us just a glimmer of this third area, this sense of presence. Because not only can I hear you, I can see you, and I can see where you are.
Mike Shrepner is known as Shrep inside Facebook.
Is it raining? Doesn't make me feel like I'm actually there with you, but I get just a little taste of maybe I am there with you, and a sense of where you are. So what we need to do over the next 10 years is really take all of these 3 areas, connectivity, natural interfaces, and true presence, to the next level. Let's talk about what this means, starting with connectivity. Over the last 7 years, we've had to invest tremendous amounts into the core infrastructure of scaling the Facebook family of services to billions of people all across the planet. And that starts with just the foundational layer, the actual physical infrastructure. You can see here our 4 open compute data centers. These are Facebook designed, engineered, built, and owned. They are some of the most state-of-the-art data centers in the world, use technologies like free air cooling to dramatically reduce power and water use in the data center. To give you a sense of scale of these buildings, because it's a little hard to tell from these pictures, if you were to park the latest generation aircraft carrier next to one of these buildings, there's often 4 on a site, the building would be just a little bit longer. This is 1,300 feet approximately, end to end. Rows and rows of machinery down these data centers. They give us massive economies of scale. These economies of scale allow us to reliably provide Facebook to billions of people all over the world. And if you were to go inside these data centers and look at the equipment there, what you're going to see is stuff that we've built and designed. This is not just cooling and UPS and electrical systems. This is racks. These are 8 different classes of servers, storage units, and in our latest data center, a next-generation flat interconnect fabric, a network design completely built by us. And when you put all of these pieces together, we've saved at least $2 billion over the last few years just on this foundational layer, just on the hardware. And you think about that amount of savings, it is really, when we talk about
mostly on cooling,
that sort of economies of scale is required in order to affordably build the sort of services we're talking about. And the best part about this, it's not just for us. You can use this too. 4 years ago, we introduced Open Compute, a revolutionary new idea where we took the ideas of open source software and applied them to hardware. And said, here's the designs for our data centers and our servers and all the equipment in them. Let's put them together and you can use them too. And this isn't theoretical. Other people have deployed entire data centers, deployed servers. If you look at the Open Compute project 4 years later, it is the who's who of hardware manufacturers. Some of the latest entrants who have joined the Open Compute initiative are HP, Juniper, and Apple Computer. And Riot Games, when they deployed Open Compute infrastructure, said that they've saved about 50% in their infrastructure costs. So this is foundational technology, not just for Facebook, but for all of you, so that together we can build the services that truly scale across the planet. And this is just the hardware layer. When you move up one layer in the stack and you say, I need something to run all my application code, build applications that run in my data center, you need some sort of runtime. For us, it's HHVM, a state-of-the-art JIT-based VM for PHP. This has, between when we first deployed it and replaced Zen PHP to now, at least a 10x efficiency win for us. Dramatic increase in efficiency. And again, this is not just for us. Lots of other companies, Box, Wikipedia, have deployed HPHP. Wikipedia has seen about a 5x increase in efficiency and 50% to 2x increase in efficiency and 50% to 2x increase in performance in many operations because we've open sourced HHVM. It's one of our more popular open source projects. So you've got this middle tier that allows you to build your application logic. And then on top of that, you need to actually build the front ends. You need to build the front end on the web, front end on mobile.
If you're joining us now, you're tuning in to TWiT's live special on the F8 conference. On stage is CTO Mike Schreppner.
I have never seen so much excitement about a technique and a technology for building front-end applications. And again, this looks like the who's who of the internet industry. If you have used Facebook on the web, if you booked your room here on Airbnb, if you watched a movie on your TV via Netflix, you've used React and you didn't even know it. Again, this is open source. It is actually our most popular open source project now, so it's available for all of you to contribute and use. But there's been one big missing piece, and that's what we're here to announce today, which is React Native is now open source, available for all of you to use.
React Native is now open source, just announced.
React Native is awesome, and you've already used it if you've used many of Facebook apps because we built it on iOS to allow us to take these same ideas for building responsive, flexible interfaces that are easy for lots of programmers to build and use it for Facebook. And open source isn't just a one-off thing for us. We have over 240 active open source projects. Almost all of them are actively deployed on Facebook infrastructure, meaning this is production code we're using, not just random stuff we create and throw out. There have been thousands of external open source contributors, and we estimate well over 10 million lines of open source code contributed by Facebook worldwide. So this is our commitment to build these services in the open with you. This is the first part, building services, software, infrastructure that scales across the planet. The second part of planetary connectivity is making sure that everyone can participate in the internet. This is a problem that all of us in this room probably take for granted. You're all here on 4G or possibly Wi-Fi, and it probably wouldn't surprise you that 4G distribution across the world isn't that broad. There's many places in the world that don't have access to 4G. You say, well, what about 3G? Yep, more people have 3G access. And even if you go back to Edge or 2G, which most of you probably haven't used for a decade, it still doesn't cover the entire planet. We'd estimate 1 to 3 billion people do not currently have access to internet data. And when you tease apart this problem and try to understand why is it that people can't get internet access, it's actually a basic lesson in economics and geography. In dense urban areas, it is economically feasible to recoup the massive capital investments telcos have to do to provide internet access. You're doing terrestrial infrastructure, where you're literally digging ditches and laying fiber or stringing fiber across poles. They're putting up cell phone towers. You're doing lots of work on the ground to provide this access. And this costs billions of dollars that you need to recoup over a large subscriber base.
Yes,
As
the
you
drones.
move to more rural areas of the world, you just can't recoup those costs. So what we're doing with Connectivity Labs is investing, as we have in OCP and others, in radical new approaches to this problem. And this basically means going to the sky. You have to have satellites, drones, and other things that don't require the massive
We all have
investments in terrestrial
Periscope
infrastructure
capability now.
in order to affordably provide internet access for this world. This is a picture of Aquila, our
Somebody
first
was
prototype
periscoping his
for
walk
our
to
unmanned
the
aerial
F8
vehicle. This is a solar-powered drone
Wow,
built
there
by
it
a
is.
team who has the record for the longest ever
How big are those?
solar-powered drone flight.
They
Can't
look
tell.
small.
Yeah, that looks tiny. It looks like a boomerang.
Can't tell,
Loiter
though, of
across
course,
an area at very high altitude, 60 to 90,000 feet in the air, stand on station for months at a time, and beam down backbone internet access. From this photo, it's hard to get a sense of scale, and this is an early prototype for testing out the aerodynamics. To give you a sense of the scale of this thing, this is us actually constructing.
Oh, it's a little bigger than I thought.
This is several wing segments.
Look at that. That's a 3D printer. That's a room-sized 3D printer.
And they have to have large wings for the solar panel.
Sure.
737 plane. All of you are probably familiar
And,
with that.
you know, good gliding
it has the mass
capabilities.
of a small car. So it's a massive wing structure with solar panels so that it can stay aloft for long periods of time. This is one of many initiatives that we're doing that we'll be able to talk in a lot more detail about later this year to provide internet connectivity for the whole world. So that's phase one. We need to get the whole world on the internet and provide all of you to build the technology needed to build services to scale. The second problem we need to solve is this information overload problem. And the most common question I get when I talk about AI
Dog
is
on a
like,
skateboard.
why is this so hard? What's this a picture of?
A dog on a skateboard.
Anyone? Dog? Right? A 21-month-old boy.
Anyone?
That question. Dog. Right? To a computer, this is a confounding question.
Yeah, that's true.
What is this? This is a series of pixels.
Kind of confusing to me, too. Why are they showing this?
We're confounded as well. The computer, like us, has no idea what the context of a dog on a skateboard might be.
Value, red, green, blue. And to a computer, each one of these images are the same. They're just a series of numbers. They can't really tell the difference between a dog or a car or a house or a person. So the real revolution
So this is their
of AI and big data
moonshot guy.
is convolutional neural nets, this idea that you can teach computers to understand more hierarchical representations of images. This is one of our
I just wish they would deliver the messages from the people that I follow.
Layers of the network. First, it
I think
figures
that'd be
out
cool.
that there are
So this is the new CTO, of
Yes,
course,
Mike
because
Shrapnel.
Brett Taylor, who had brought in as during the acquisition of FriendFeed, has left.
And then that's the background. And you can see it's categorizing fruits, cars, wheels, other parts of the image. So you can start to build up deeper understanding of what's inside the content, not just the actual representation of it. But you can apply this not just to images, but to videos. I'd ask you if
Brett
I
left
showed
to
you
found a
sports
company
clip
called
and
Quip
asked you to tell me what kind of sport it is, how many different
that
kinds
does
of sports
live
do you think you
streaming.
can name?
No, I'm just kidding.
A dozen, 100, 300 different sports? Kind of for fun, we said, can we build a classifier that classifies 487 different kinds of sports? So let's see this in action. So I can tell you what you're looking at here. Up on the top of the screen, you'll see the actual top two categories. It classifies as a number of categories, but the number one is what category it thinks the sport is. This is just by looking at the pixels in the video. So it's looking at the video clip and trying to figure out what kind of sport is this. So you'll see this one's basketball. It's a fairly easy one. This is the easy clips. Baseball, badminton, rafting, table tennis. These are pretty easy if you actually think about it, fairly easy to identify. As you can see, we have a very strong confidence interval. We're actually completely confident, 1.0, that this is table tennis.
Trump isn't that new.
But
Of course,
cool
he's
thing about
been here a
these
couple of years, but
is you can get them to understand very minute.
I still think of it as the new CTO at
Think about
Facebook.
all the different sports that involve skating and hockey. When I got into this, there's more than I realized. Let's look at some of these. Ice skating, synchronized skating, figure skating, artistic roller skating. That's roller skating. Oh, that's short track speed skating. Hockey, sledge hockey.
Yeah, but
Underwater hockey.
how do they put that puck with the things on it? That's
robot
amazing.
combat. I'm not sure that's really a sport, but
Oh, that's a sport.
Look how quickly it's
yeah,
catching
freestyle
these. Did you see
this is my
Gaelic
favorite
football? That's
mountain
not so easy.
Mountain
Unicycle.
unicycling?
In 0.27 seconds.
I'll lie if I didn't
pretty impressive.
watch this video a lot of times prepping for this talk.
What about underwater
So you can really
unicycling?
get these systems to
Is that a sport?
understand deep.
There were some sports that I
minute
didn't
differences.
recognize, I got to tell you.
Inline roller skating and hockey and ice skating between hockey and sledge hockey and underwater
The
hockey.
Periscope tells you all
Understand
sorts
them
of great stats after you.
But the
Yeah.
real trick we're trying
So much
to do
better
is
than
we're trying to
Meerkat.
understand
Is it,
context,
you think?
not
It
just
is,
images or video.
It's more
but to
polished.
really understand context and language. And before any of us get too excited about the power of AI and what we can do here, you have to realize how easy it is to trip up.
You could go back
even
and
the state-of-the-art
see who
systems.
viewed your Periscope
Let's try a
after
really
the
simple
fact.
test.
Right.
I
The best,
turned it off because I
Playground,
stopped getting
Bob's in
hearts.
the office.
The hearts are
Football.
fabulous.
Bob went to
the thing is, you can do a
Where's the football?
1-minute video or a 30-second video, and it makes sense.
It's in the
Whereas with
playground. Why is it
Meerkat,
in the playground?
nobody even shows up for like 10
John picked
minutes.
up the
Right.
football. Where's John? He's in the playground.
Well, that's because everybody's
For
getting
all of you,
notifications.
this is like a. Well,
This is
not
impressive.
question, Trev. This is-
Although,
for a computer again,
It's a little
even
scary,
state-of-the-art
right?
system circa
Well,
6
Facebook
months ago
reportedly
could
has
not reliably answer this
face
question.
recognition. They're not talking
Because
about
it
that yet,
requires
but
stringing together facts
it's as
that
good
we
as
just
human
learned about.
human brain's ability to
Basic
recognize.
And I have to
convolutional
think
nets are
Google
like
does
big
too. I
patterns.
They
mean,
probably
Train
do.
them on a ton of data. And then once you're done, it's like a little box, and you feed it something.
And this is the thing is why.
When you teach it new things about the world, and you feed it new facts, it doesn't learn. It doesn't have a memory. Let's try another one. John is in the playground. This is even easier. Daniel picks up the milk. Is John in the classroom?
That's
no,
easy.
I just told you he's in the playground, right? Simple question. Again, confounds most traditional AI systems.
Shouldn't it be on the playground?
So our team took a new approach. They built a new system.
Somebody the school bully got a shovel and buried him in the playground.
I think it's Jimmy Hoffa is in the playground. The computer should have said that. Watson would have known that.
Sorry for the small font, because we're actually capturing, this is Antoine, who just wrote this paper. This is Dev Server on Friday. We know this is real because he accidentally deleted the training network and had to retrain it.
This is the Lord of the Rings story.
We're actually doing a screen cap from his from Torch, which
is
the system we've
The
opened
Hobbit.
to build AI systems.
The story of the ring,
his Dev
really.
Server on Friday. And what we're doing is this
all
memory
4
neural
books.
net has a short-term memory, so you can answer
Bilbo left
questions on
the
facts
ring
that
there.
you've just seen.
Frodo got the ring.
And so we like Lord of the Rings.
Frodo
we
dropped the
like
ring.
Now, see if the eagle, if the AI says, but why didn't he just take the eagles?
If you can see this in the audience, it's kind of Bilbo went to the cave,
Why didn't they just make a 2-hour movie?
Went to the Shire, Frodo got the ring, went to Mount Doom, dropped it there, went back home. You know, kind of the
It's a shorter
Cliff
script
Notes
I'm looking
version of the Lord of the Rings.
So I'm having an upload
Misses all the
error
cool
on
battles,
Periscope.
but you know, it's a
Probably a
computer.
lot of people doing.
So, prior
Theo,
to
did you
seeing
crash
this
Periscope
this
personally?
system knew nothing about the Lord of the Rings. It was not
Wait till-
trained
wait till,
on
Needles gets a
classics,
hold of it.
which wasn't read a corpus of Tolkien. It just has seen this for the first time right before we answer this next command, and we start asking it similar questions you just saw. Things like, where's the ring?
Well, now
Again,
it's
you have to understand that Frodo had it, he went to Mount Doom, and he dropped it there, so it's at Mount Doom. Well, what happened before that? Well, Bilbo had it before that, and he was in the Shire, so the ring was in the Shire. And then where is Frodo now? Well, he went back to the Shire. So you can see complex chaining of facts together, understanding of time and
this is
relationship.
kind
between
of,
objects
I don't know,
and
is this
time.
really?
This is a
Or
true
is it just
breakthrough in what we're
a
doing.
little bit better,
with
Eliza?
intelligence.
Tepid applause.
Well, they want to know. Are you done?
Yeah, he stopped talking.
All right, so the next question I get, the
Both
first
of those
question I get is
guys
like,
were
why is this so
periscoping
hard?
it.
Second question I get, I've shown this to a lot of people at work, and they're all like, sweet demo, Shrep. What the
Yeah,
heck does this
north,
have to do with Facebook?
north, climb mountain, get ring.
Like, cool, Lord of the Rings, I get it. I don't understand.
Thank you, Patrick Delahanty.
And that's where this comes in. When you think about the problem we're trying to solve,
You're at the end of a
all
road.
of you have seen this. We had our data scientists
Hours
do a
of
very
cat
deep
video,
study
hours
in
awake.
the content production of cat videos on the internet. They've determined after extensive study that it's exponential in terms of the growth of cat videos on the internet. And breaking news, the amount of hours in your day is constant. This is the attention problem. Y'all are supposed to laugh there. That's all right.
Yeah, that was a joke, right? Yeah.
Everyone knows why engineers aren't good at jokes timing.
Oh, God, please, Mike. Please, Mike.
Don't do shtick.
All right.
It's okay. He's likable.
So, in all seriousness,
This is Mike Schroepfer. He's the
if we achieve
CTO
our
at
first goal,
Facebook.
get everyone on the internet, build services that scale.
Came
to
from
the entire
Mozilla.
planet. We create this new problem.
Was,
so much
involved in the
information,
development
you
of
can't consume
Firefox.
stuff that's important to you.
Formerly
We
from
want
Sun
you to spend every minute
Microsystems,
of your
who's
day
CTO
and have
there.
control over what you look at and what you see and what you interact with. A great life is where you can spend the time on the things you want and most importantly with the
And
people
he's
you
got
want.
one of the best jobs
And
in
by
the world.
building systems that understand the context of the world, understand what it is you want, we can help you there. We can build these systems that make sure all of us spend time on the things we care about. That's the promise of applying AI to something like Facebook. All right. So we've got everyone on the internet. We've got systems that help you
So we're
navigate what's
expecting
going
in a
on.
few
We're
minutes
going
Chief
apart.
Scientist of Oculus,
Sense of
Michael
presence.
Abrash.
This is VR. This is
Here we
Developer
go.
Kit
Here we
2.
go.
The Oculus, current shipping developer kit for Oculus. They've sold a few 100,000 of these to
I
developers
have
all
the
over
first
world.
one, of
Many of
course.
you may have some.
And did the right thing, which is give it to a
And
teenager.
similar to AI,
Yes.
the question we ask
He has
ourselves when we
managed
look
to
at
make it
VR
do all
is,
sorts of interesting
well, VR
things.
is
Really?
awesome.
Yeah.
I mean,
Our intern,
I've always
Chris.
wanted VR, haven't you?
Oh.
But
And of course,
why is it going to work now when it didn't work in the 80s or 90s
Samsung's
or 2000s?
Gear VR uses Oculus
And
technology.
when you look at it, you realize what was required to make VR work now is that every core component that's part of VR, this is, if you look at the Developer Kit 2, you've got integrated circuits and IMUs and gyros to track location. You've got a high-resolution screen. You've got a high-resolution, high-performance camera to do 6 degree of freedom tracking so you can see where the head is.
I want to
positioned
watch
at
ready?
this
one point
in
time.
VR.
You ready for this?
You've got to manufacture all of this at a cost that's reasonable for a consumer to buy. And so each one of these
I wonder if
core tracks of
next year you'll be able to be at
technology
the
had to hit
F8
a minimum
conference
bar of
virtually.
viability.
You know,
Why not?
that's really what this is best for,
Yes.
rather than canned experiences. I think live experiences. I was thinking as I periscoped in
That sense that
that if
you are
next year I had a VR camera, people could join me in the car.
This is
Yeah.
Look out the window.
one of the
Yep.
first VR games, 1980 Battlezone. Did anyone play this?
Oh, I was
Yeah. If
unstoppable
you
at
remember, it's
Battlezone.
like
Yeah, because you found the trick, which is if you go all the way and you go back. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, you can never die.
You back.
You are immersed.
You've
in
got two
feeling
levers.
like
You do it like
driving.
that, and you just back. They can't
Anyone
hit
feel
you.
like they're actually
Exactly.
driving a tank
Easy,
right now?
easy game.
This is state-of-the-art 19.
I know the guy who
vector
wrote the
graphics
volcano code.
with equivalently state-of-the-art.
He works at Atari.
Going next to it.
Yeah.
And I tell you, in the 1980s,
And that was a big deal, 'cause that cost a quarter.
That perfectly injected photons
great
in
game.
the real world into your eyes.
I don't know if I want to
And
be in
I
a
powered
real
something like this and said
3D
you're in a tank.
vector world.
No.
There's not a
That's,
second that would go by that you would think you were actually there.
but it
Let's see
raises
what
an
we can do
interesting
with
point
2015 consumer
because that was
technology.
with the
So this next
technology
demo
available at the
is
time,
a
right?
game under development.
Essentially a
The
6502.
film here is actually shot in the Oculus, so all of the camera
It'd be
motion
cool
you're
to
seeing is
actually be inside of a
playing this
tank.
game in real time
Now, he said
on a
something
PC
interesting.
with hardware you can buy today.
The film was
Looking
shot
around,
in
as
the
they look around in the
Oculus.
Oculus.
How
You're
would
seeing the camera
how would
move.
that be done?
Let's see what this looks like.
Oh, I see. What they've done is they're trying to give you the experience that you would have. Oh, this is Battlezone. See, I don't think the lever trick's gonna work.
No, darn it.
Maybe they didn't fix that. They were so busy on the VR.
Don't use this while you're actually driving a car.
And of course, a lot of flight sim folks use multiple monitors to get this kind of simulate this kind of look out the window on the side or the back.
In a Mobile World Congress,
I'm
a
sick
guy was
already.
making a VR chair that would turn you upside down at that moment to simulate gravity.
No, thank you.
Listen up. This is Lieutenant Kavik.
Yeah, it's very immersive, right?
Yeah.
Much more immersive. This is very cool. Looked like Wing Commander. It did.
Anyone else get out of their seat when you got out of that catapult to the end?
No.
No.
I swear, I've watched this video a lot too. This is amazing. You're going to be able to do this year in VR.
This year. This
It's
year.
going to be incredible.
When he says you, does he mean you developers or you?
You're going to be doing it
people.
in something shipped by Oculus. This is Crescent Bay, the latest prototype of what we're building to build VR.
No
We've shown this here.
wires.
Hopefully many of
Or
you
are
have gotten
there?
a
There's
chance to
one
see the
wire.
Oculus booth in the building next door. If you haven't seen it here, you might have seen it at Game Developer Conference or
Hmm?
CES. We've shown this to thousands of people.
That was the
And
teleportation
just like
booth
here,
we were
people
just
are
looking
waiting
at.
in lines, this is at CES, for hours at a time in order to see the magic of presence and the magic of VR. And after thousands of demos, we know we are just on the cusp, just getting there to get that sense of presence, where for a moment, your conscious brain is overruled by your subconscious, which says you are not where you think you are. When you're standing on the top of the building, you can't step forward when I tell you to, even though you're in a room and not in a building. So we know we're just getting to that minimum bar of presence this year with what we can build with VR technology. Okay, again, sweet demo, Shrep. What the heck does this have to do with Facebook? VR is awesome. Why is Facebook talking about this? That's the very next question I always get whenever we're talking about this. And I'd ask you this. So by show of hands, how many in the audience, when you go out to the movies, do you usually go by yourself?
And this is a loaded
Not very
question
many.
for this
Yeah.
group.
Always.
Yeah. Look, we're nerds. It's okay. This is a safe place. Why the heck do we go to a closed room where I can't interact with someone next to me, sit there for 2 hours?
Can you
and stare at the
balance
screen?
our mics with the
Why do we do that with
presentation
someone
mics
else?
a
Why
little
don't
bit
we go
better?
alone?
Because people want to
Because
hear
we're
what they're
creating
saying.
a moment, an experience, a shared memory.
There you go.
On the way to the theater, can't wait to see the last installment of The Lord of the Rings. On the way home, can you believe that fight scene at the end? It is a moment in time where you and your friends or loved ones were together in a space, and you had that experience. Those moments where we're bringing people together is what we are trying to do.
Soon you'll be able to go to the
It's
movies
the
by
core of our
yourself with a
mission.
bunch of other people.
You've all
By
experienced
themselves.
this in a very small way.
Well, that's
on your birthday on Facebook.
one of the things
I
that
had a birthday
Samsung's
recently,
Gear
and I had this
VR
moment
does.
where
Puts you in a
people
movie
from
theater.
all over my
It's an empty
life,
movie theater.
You look around.
school to
Bunch of
work,
empty
to
seats.
family, celebrated my birthday with me. And I got a surprise when I came to work. Mark made me blow out one candle for every year I was old. which gets harder every year. Let's see what this looks like.
This is what passes for fun at Facebook.
And that's what passes for cake.
Barely made it.
I hope not.
Got to work on that lung
Yeah,
capacity.
but he did
next year.
chop it down himself.
That's right. He killed it.
It was a fun moment.
Killed the tree.
So a reverent, fun little moment. It was a surprise. So lots of people I care about weren't there to celebrate it with me. But thanks to Facebook, they could. We shared the video. They all could see it and participate in it with me. But these moments in life that are amazing,
Traditional
you want to bring
birthday
everyone
plank,
in with you
says
for,
Eric.
happen all the time, not just on birthdays. Any parents
Traditional
in the room knows
pirate
this
birthday.
happened. Just this weekend, Sunday, my 4-year-old rode for the first time without her training wheels.
See, that's a great thing to have.
It's an amazing event.
Yeah.
And it's one of those moments where I wanted everyone.
And I
her
recorded it with Google
grandparents, her
Glass.
nieces, her nephews, her uncles and aunts. I wished everyone could have been teleported to that moment. And so the real power of marrying this technology that gives you this sense of presence and
We're gonna
being
need
in
helmets
time
with
and
cameras
place
all
with
over them.
someone, and the most
Has he showed the camera? Because I'm.
most used
Yeah.
social connection platform in the world, Facebook, together, is our ability to bring everyone into these moments at one point in time and to have this true sense like you were there. That's our hope with what we can do with VR. So that's our goal.
I'd love
over
to
the
see
next
the
10
camera.
years. We're going to connect the world. We're going to build systems that help you manage all of that information and connectivity. And we're going to build technology that fundamentally brings people together. I think it's going to be fun. I'm pretty excited about the
think
next
it sounds
10
like
years. It's going
Skynet.
to be crazy, fun. And I'm very, very happy to have all of you.
Really
along
is
with
the
us.
race to build
As we
Skynet
have in all
between
of these
Google and
technologies, we're going to
Facebook
be
at this
working with
point.
all of you to bring this future about that betters all of us. With that, it is my
You know, what
great
I don't think they've
honor
demonstrated
and
is how it
pleasure
betters
to
all of
introduce
us
Mike
yet.
Labrash,
Right.
Chief Scientist, Oculus.
Definitely betters Facebook.
Well, does it? I don't even. He didn't answer the question. Why is Facebook so interested in VR?
If they can make Facebook even more addicting.
Morning.
Here's the Oculus guy.
I have to tell you
Michael
That's
Labrash.
that
what it
for
says
me,
on its card.
being here is one of the most astonishing events in a life that's had more than its share of them. Even 3 years ago, the idea that in 2015 I'd be giving a keynote on virtual reality to tens of thousands of people at F8 wouldn't just have been science fiction, it would have been pure fantasy. VR had been dead and buried for more than a decade.
That's true.
It seemed no closer to broad success in 2012 than it had 25 years earlier. And yet, amazingly, here we are. Recently, I took some time to think about how I'd come to this remarkable point, and I realized the thread ran a long way back. The roots clearly lay in a lifetime of reading science fiction, which showed me the path to thinking about VR as not only possible,
Snow
but as something
Crash.
that I personally
The metaverse.
could help to make happen.
There
There
go.
it is.
And Ready
In
Player One,
particular,
which will be
Neil
directed by Steven
Stevenson's Snow Crash
Spielberg.
helped me see that
next
virtual
year.
worlds were possible
Yeah.
way back in 1994, and more recently, Ernest Cline's Ready Player One painted a compelling picture of what VR could
I
be.
think for a lot of
with
us,
some
Snow
breakthroughs
Crash was
and a
what
lot of
kind of
hard work.
inspired that. And the
What I
idea of
also
jacking in
realized,
that
though, was that
William
while
Gibson
science fiction
featured in
novels
Neuromancer.
gave me the
Yeah.
conceptual framework for thinking about VR, it was The Matrix that made me believe in it. Even
Not
though
in a
it was
good
based
way.
on technology that won't exist for decades, if ever, the Matrix
Kind of a
gave me a deep
counterexample.
sense of what VR could someday be like.
Someday the machines
Not
can
only how
fool us.
real it could be,
They've explained to you why
but
your
also
muscles were
how
sore because
exciting
you've never
it would be
used them.
to bend and stretch that reality.
Watch for the glitches.
So I went back and watched The Matrix again, and it was just as fun and inspiring as I had remembered.
It is. I vividly
What I
remember
hadn't
walking out of the
remembered,
Matrix, the first one,
Just before we
and
learned that
just
humans
feeling
are
like my
batteries,
mind had been blown.
there's a
Yeah.
speech
The
by
world, my
Morpheus
vision of the world had
that
changed.
does a
Yeah, I saw it in
remarkably
Paris.
concise
Didn't hear
job
anything
of
about it in
summing up
advance. Just
what it
saw-
is.
it
It
was
kind of me
looked like
too.
a cool
I didn't know what I
movie.
was going to see. Yeah.
And it was
Here's that
mind-blowing.
speech.
Here's
What
Morpheus.
is real? How do you define real? If you are talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain. That's really all you need to know to understand why VR is not just cool, but world-changing, and why you are going to care a lot about VR sooner or later.
It's not exactly the
Let's
Lawrence
dive into the
Fishburne
implications
delivery.
of Morpheus' speech. The place to start is with understanding what virtual reality really is. Most people focus on the virtual part of virtual reality, meaning artificially generated inputs to the perceptual system. However, The right place to focus is on the second word, reality. Morpheus asked the question that's at the heart of today's talk, what is real? Then answered his own question with, real is simply electrical signals interpreted by the brain. He made two critical points with that sentence. The one most people pick up on is that we, our conscious minds, never actually interact with the real world. Instead, we interact with signals from sensors in our eyes, in our ears, in our skin, on our tongue, in our nose, in our balance organs,
sensorium,
and throughout our body. We only know what those sensors detect, interpret, and signal to the brain. And that's actually a very small subset of the real world. Consider vision. We can't see infrared or ultraviolet. We only have 3 color sensors. We only see about a 2-degree circle in high resolution. We have a blind spot in each eye. We can only see a fraction of the full 360 degrees around us in every direction at one time. We have no blue photoreceptors in the center of our vision and a large blind spot straight ahead at night. And everything but the plane we're focusing on is blurry. Rich as it seems to be, our visual data is actually astonishingly sparse. But even if we were able to accurately record the magnitude and direction of every photon that reached our eyes, we'd still have far too little data to be able to reconstruct the world accurately.
We're basically a bunch of voles.
Yes.
For example,
wandering.
I'm pretty sure most of you have seen The Dress. Is this a blue and black dress and white and
Here
yellow
we
light,
go.
or a white and
And
gold
this is
dress
why
and
Facebook
blue
wants
light?
VR.
Given the photons reaching your eyes, it's an unsolvable problem. No passive sensor is capable of resolving that ambiguity. In order to form a coherent model of the world, our perceptual system has to make assumptions and send its best guess to the conscious mind. And this particular picture is so ambiguous that some people see it one way and some the other. It's noteworthy how deeply certain people are about whichever guess their perceptual system makes. They just know they're right. And here we come to the second and less noted part of Morpheus's definition of reality. Real is just electrical signals interpreted by the brain. The way the brain compensates for the limited data it receives is by maintaining a model of the real world that it constantly updates as new data comes in. And it is that model, not the real world, that you actually experience and trust implicitly. Don't believe it? If you're experiencing the real world right now, why can't you see your blind spot? Why aren't you aware that you can't see blue straight ahead? Why can't you tell that you're only seeing an area about the size of your thumb in high resolution? It's because your brain has a model that fills in those gaps with its best guess at the state of the world at every moment. And it's that model that you actually see, hear, feel, smell, and taste. At the core of the reality that each and every one of us experiences lies the fact that we're inference machines, not objective observers. By which I mean that there is, presumably, a real world out there. And your brain is taking the very limited signals coming from your sensors and trying to infer what the state of that real world is based on its internal model. It's one thing to listen to words about how we infer reality, but it's another matter to actually experience it. So let's look at an example where the inference mechanism breaks down.
These are the notes for his TED Talk later this year. And
something is not right here.
This really doesn't have anything to do with Oculus Rift.
I'll explain this later.
Well known.
The point is that what you see in this video,
there's a lot of very
ambiguous,
fundamental stuff in this whole presentation.
And your perceptual system has chosen the wrong solution based on a set of assumptions.
Well, I don't think they have that much to show. I mean,
the same process happens every waking second of your life. The only difference is that you normally infer the correct solution to the state of the world. The fact that reality is whatever your mind infers from the nerve impulses sent by your sensors, based on its model of the world, is at the heart of what makes VR different and more powerful than anything that has come before. It's so important that I'm going to spend a few minutes giving you a deeper sense of how ambiguous the world really is, as observed through our various sensors, and the extent to which reality is constructed by our minds rather than recorded by our senses. Where better to start than by choosing between a red pill and a blue pill.
So far, the only thing
Unlike
Facebook's
Morpheus,
done was announced
I'm not
yesterday,
offering
which
you a
is
choice
to
today.
embed 3D
No matter which color you
videos
pick,
suitable for viewing
we're
in
all
an
heading down
Oculus
the
Rift in your
rabbit hole
Facebook newsfeed.
So
That I don't
pick
think
a
is a
pill
particularly
and keep your eyes on
compelling.
it.
No.
Got it?
All right,
Let's
look at
mask
the
off
pill.
everything else.
Oh my God, they're the same.
Interesting. You were pretty sure that out there in the real world, one pill was red and one was blue. But they're exactly the same shade of gray. The colors you saw were
I
entirely...
can only imagine the
reflected by
developers in
your
the audience getting a little
perceptual
antsy at this point. This
system.
is
Existed nowhere else.
We've all seen
In fact,
optical
let's look at the
illusions.
original
yes,
spec
thank you. Optical illusions, they work.
What color are the pills now? It doesn't even make any difference that you know they're both gray. You still see red and blue.
I don't see red and blue.
So what does that say about how well your perceptions
Do you see red and blue
correspond to the
pills
real
there?
world?
No, actually, I
Welcome
don't.
to the rabbit hole. And yes,
Well, I guess I can
know
make
it looks
myself
like
see
I
if you
photoshopped
kind
this
of squint.
By definition, it's hard to show you visual illusions that don't look photoshopped. So your packet contains a physical version of the
Oh,
pills
wow.
that you can check out later and verify that I'm not cheating.
Yeah, no, I believe
Let's
you.
look at some other illusions and what they tell us about how we perceive reality. Some of these may not work perfectly for some of you. It's a bit unpredictable doing illusions on a big screen, but they should work well enough to make the important points. Take a good look at the blue tiles on top of the left cube. Okay, now take a good look at the yellow tiles on top of the right cube. You think those are colors you're seeing now? Let's mask off everything but those particular tiles. They're all exactly
Gasps.
the same shade of gray. This
Hey,
is similar to the pillow.
similar, it's identical.
But it's
Okay.
clearer here what's happening.
Just in case you...
Your visual system isn't interested in whether the photons coming from a tile in a random image are red or blue or gray. Knowing that didn't keep anyone from being eaten by lions.
I'm sorry,
on
did
the
I say this was Ted? This is his
What
Discovery
it is
Channel.
interested in is identifying potentially relevant features in the real world under a variety of conditions. When you look at an object, what your eye gets to work with is an approximation of the spatial distribution of wavelengths of light.
Come on,
But what
man.
your brain
Plug me
cares
back into
about is the
Facebook. I
actual
don't
color
want to
of the
remember
object.
nothing.
So your visual system constantly corrects for the lighting in a scene. Given the apparent lighting in this scene, the best guess is that the left tiles are blue and the right tiles are yellow. Here's another example that shows that your visual system is reverse engineering reality rather than
I
just
wonder why they would choose
this
to
time
spend so much
involving
time.
brightness.
They have the world's rapt attention
See the white tile
on
under the desk?
the fact
black
that,
tiles just outside
yes,
the desk?
the mind constructs reality.
Again, let's
like-
mask off everything
I
else.
think it's a... we could accept this
And again,
and stipulate
they're
it.
both
Now move
exactly
on.
the same
Yeah,
shade of gray.
exactly.
But if
You,
one of them
I'll tell you why.
is
They
in
have
shadow
nothing to
and
say
is
about
that
Oculus
shade of
Rift. I
gray,
mean, that's
it must be
apparent,
white.
right?
Yeah.
They've done it.
And
That's
if another
done.
one is in bright light and is that shade of gray, it must be black. Your visual system does the inference for you automatically, and what you see is white and black rather than gray. Let's look at how we perceive form next. Here we have a nice square checkerboard. Let's add some dots and see what happens. This happens because some line detectors fire that normally wouldn't be triggered by a checkerboard. When we have a regular checkerboard, your visual system deploys cells with sensitivity to contrast edges at various orientations, represented by this starburst. And of those, it detects high contrast edges at exactly two orientations, the horizontal and the vertical. So you see right angles, as you'd expect. But if we switch to the bulging checkerboard image and deploy the same perceptual mechanisms to detect orientation, your visual system detects high contrast not only at the horizontal and vertical orientations, but also on slightly slanted axes as well. As a result, the perceived orientation is skewed. Rather than looking orthogonal, the corners look bowed. The checkerboard is a 2D demonstration. Next, let's straddle 2D and 3D. Take a moment and figure out which of the two tabletops in blue is wider as measured in 2D and which is longer, assuming you rotated them to line up. Ready? They're exactly the same size.
Oh, Lord.
Think the shape morphed while it moved? So did I.
Let's take you to the mystery spot in Santa Cruz, California, where you won't believe your eyes.
Punch the left-hand table out of the paper.
Maybe he wants to
over the right-hand
be
table.
the new Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord. Oh, how many of the geeks are doing this?
You know, at Google, they would give you an Oculus Rift.
Yeah.
But no, you get a packet.
Well, no, they gave us cardboard last.
That's right.
Last I.O. But at least it worked.
Exactly.
At least it did something. Oh. I gotta think somebody there. Look at the guy with his arms folded.
Yeah.
I think somebody there is thinking, I paid $5,000 for this.
And he's doing a keynote.
If you
He's
have
just
a guy
sitting there
there, you
waiting
can
for
always
people
do
to
this
open up
later.
packages.
Trust me.
Later today,
They are indeed
a
the same
tour
size.
of Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum. It's on Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco.
We live in a 3D world, and the 3D objects implied
And this
by
is
the
why
3D shapes
nerds
of
go to
the
movies
table
alone.
are quite different.
Exactly.
Your brain does this calculation automatically for you, making the assumption that you're looking at a 3D world. That's wrong in the specific case of trying to compare 2D table sizes here, but in general,
I'm gonna
it
go
allows
watch
us to function
Periscope.
in
I
a
hope you
3D
don't mind.
world, which is, after all, where we happen to live. Of course, the world isn't static, so perceiving motion is critical.
Yeah, we're watching live coverage right now. Almost live coverage of the Facebook F8 Developers Conference. This is the day 2 keynote. And speaking right now, not the founder of Oculus Rift. Palmer was smart enough not to go, but is he the current president? Or
He's the chief scientist of Oculus.
Chief scientist at Oculus Rift.
Michael Abrash.
And so far he's been mostly doing optical illusions.
Yeah, magic tricks. And they're not new ones either. These are the ones that we've all seen.
I've seen these on Google Plus many times.
Even though they're not actually changing. If that doesn't work for you, look at either dot.
I mean, I hope that there's a big message for developers of Oculus here saying that, you know, you really have to be responsible with the illusions or something.
Oh, you're really working hard.
But
to
yeah,
make
just put it in the packet and move
the
on.
dots are focused near the fovea, the high-resolution part of your retina. The sharp circular edges are the highest frequency components, so the movement of the dots drives motion detection. Away from the fovea, however, there's not enough resolution to pick up those edges clearly. So motion detection is based on the movement
What I
of lower
want is
frequency patterns within each dot.
a drone that has
Here we can clearly
virtual
see the
reality
interaction
cameras,
of the particular
360,
design of your
up,
visual
down,
sensors with your
sideways.
motion detection mechanisms.
That would be cool.
Most of the time, the two work harmoniously together, but this example shows that that relationship.
I'm looking at a blog post from Abrash when he joined Oculus a year ago. The path to the metaverse he talks about in the
Here's a video of a carnival.
mid-90s, meeting John Carmack and spending hours talking about how to build the metaverse. So this is a long-time goal. He comes from Valve.
Put it over your left eye like this, making sure to keep both eyes open and look at the video again. Pay particular attention to
Of course,
the chair,
Carmack is the
especially
CTO.
if
I would
it's
have rather
in
see
front of the
him,
carousel.
frankly, but
Remember, hold the film in
problem
front
with
of your left
scientists
eye,
is they
both eyes open. The chair
like
should
doing
pop
this.
out toward you like watching a 3D movie. It doesn't work for everyone, but most people can see the effect clearly.
I guess it's
You'll also
important to
see an
understand
interesting
the
3D effect
fundamentals
the
of
chairs
how
across the trees
VR
on the lower
works.
right.
Not exactly breaking news, though.
Yeah. Oh, boy. There's a
The
lot of
reason
people
for this
not doing
3D
that, by the way.
effect is a fascinating glimpse into our perceptual machinery. The less light the retina is receiving, the slower the eye is to send a signal to the brain. As a result of the dark filter, your left eye is signaling the brain later than your right eye. That means the signal from frame N of the video reaches the visual cortex from the right
Abrash
eye
also
earlier
works at
than frame N
Microsoft.
from the left eye. Since your depth perception depends on the relative positions of objects between the two eyes, this delay of the left eye's signal means objects moving right to left appear to be nearer and vice versa. Since the nearer objects in this scene are
In
fact
1990,
right
he
to
wrote a
left,
book
and
called
farther
The
objects
Zen
left
of
to right,
Assembly
they
Language.
pop out as 3D, a phenomenon known as the Pulfrich effect.
Boy, he made a good move into something more interesting.
His
Now let's go
Wikipedia
back to
article
the
says
first
he's a
illusion
game
we saw,
programmer and
the
technical
illusion.
writer, not a scientist. Is that the same
Of
one?
course, the straw isn't really going through the window. What's happening here is that you're making a very
He
reasonable
wrote
assumption
Space
about the
Strike in
world that happens to
1982,
be wrong.
Snack Attack for the Apple II, and Cosmic
There are a
Crusader
number of
Big
cues
Top.
on the window that imply a perspective that doesn't exist.
Wrote
So your
the
visual
assembly,
system infers
some of the
that window is
graphics
spinning
code in
backwards
assembly
from
language for
the
Windows
window.
NT 3.1.
As a result, the straw seems to rotate
Worked
right
on
through the
Quake.
window. This doesn't match
That was
any
actually a
reasonable
record
model of
player that was
reality,
doing that illusion.
so you end up seeing something impossible.
Yeah. We've seen that on a
The
record
next
player, of course,
example
turntable.
also
If you could
makes
find a
the wrong assumption,
turntable.
but doesn't wind up with an impossible solution.
He
Just an incorrect one.
did do natural language research for Microsoft, was on the Xbox team.
Mashable and Engadget both picked up on the hint that Oculus Rift will be available this year.
Yeah. Well, it is in a way because it's available right now because, of course, the Gear VR uses Oculus Rift.
Here's what's
It's
actually
you need a
happening.
Note 4 or an S6
Real
and the
objects,
appropriate headset.
especially faces, tend to be convex. So your visual system assumes convexity in the absence of cues to the contrary. The only way to make
This man's
that
really
work in
worked
this case
everywhere at
is for the head to be
Microsoft,
moving in very odd
at
ways. So that's exactly what you see.
id, doing Quake. He's worked at
As the oracle
Intel.
might say,
He's
here's
worked
what's
at
really
Valve.
going to bake your noodle later on. Now that you know what's happening,
Joined Oculus a
try to
year
see the dragon
ago,
as
almost
it really
exactly,
is.
as chief scientist. He was not at Oculus at any point. He joined
you can't do
after
it.
Facebook
A
agreed
little bit
to
of
buy
conscious
Oculus.
knowledge isn't going to undo millions of years of evolution and a lifetime of looking at faces.
He's best known really as a
There are many
writer.
other
Wrote for
visual
Dr. Dobbs'
illusions.
journal. I actually now
All
remember his
sorts of audio,
byline.
touch, smell, taste,
Wrote a lot about
motion,
assembly
orientation,
language.
balance illusions. These tell us a great deal about our perceptual system, but our model of the world is constructed out of many inputs across all our senses. So multi-sense illusions are even more revealing about the inferential nature of reality. We only have time to look at one of these, the McGurk effect, but it's one of the best demonstrations I've seen of how we construct reality.
Bar, 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 bar.
Obviously, she's saying bar, bar, bar.
I think she wants a
Now
drink.
let's watch a slightly different
Beer?
It's an alcoholic.
Beer?
Bar, 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 bar.
Here we can clearly
The bar
hear
is
her
too
saying
far.
Far, far, far. Except that she isn't.
What?
The video shows her saying far, but the audio track is still of her saying bar exactly as she
My
did in the
God.
first video.
That's actually kind of
The
interesting.
visual input overrode the audio.
Well, that's called lip
To make
reading.
it crystal clear what's going on, let's look at this one
That's
more time.
really interesting.
Yeah.
Once again, we'll have a soundtrack that says bar, but this time we'll have a split screen with a face saying far on one side and a face saying bar on the other. As this plays, move your eyes from one side to the other and observe how what you hear changes.
Bar, 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 bar,
Wow, that's really
Bar.
interesting.
bar,
I've never seen that one.
bar, bar.
Now, about that Oculus Rift,
The McGurk effect is an emphatic answer to
The
the
McGurk
question,
effect?
What is real? What you hear depends on what you're looking at.
throwing that
not
away.
just
I'll
the
use
sounds
that
in
Should
your
be
Twit a
called the
couple years
far
from now.
effect.
You aren't a microphone.
Far.
The
You're an
McGurk
inference
Far.
machine that integrates all available evidence to construct the most likely model of the world. In short, reality is what our brain reconstructs it to be, based on our model of the world and the sparse data coming in from our senses. I think it's fair to say that our experience of the world is an illusion, one that evolution has honed to be highly functional in terms of survival and reproduction. Since the primary objective of the perceptual system as it evolved was to stay alive, it operates rapidly and automatically. As the McGurk effect demonstrates, given a particular set of inputs, we have very little conscious choice about the reality we'll experience. That's why the rare cases where you actually can choose the experience stand out, like this Necker cube, where you can flip between looking at a cube from above and from below. Which brings us back to virtual reality and why it's different from anything that's come
Moment too
before.
soon.
VR is about experiencing a virtual world as real. And what we've just learned is that an experience is real to the extent it convinces your perceptual system and brain. Because experience
So
is
that
nothing
means to
more
the
or
extent he
less
can
than
convince
whatever
me
your mind
Oculus
infers
Rift is real.
from the data
Right.
it receives. And our perceptual system does
Or
that
they can convince us that an ad
regardless
is
of what the conscious mind
a
knows.
recommended post.
Yeah,
What
did he
that
really ever
means
explain why
is that
Facebook is
virtual
involved
reality,
here?
done right, truly is reality as far as the observer is concerned. So what does it take to do virtual reality right? As it turns
We could
out,
do bar and far.
virtual
You want to do the
reality
McGurk
doesn't
effect
have
a
to
little later on?
replicate the real
No.
world
Just you and
in
me.
order to work. It just
You
has
could-
to provide
okay.
the right
You could do it
Bar.
on
in order
Periscope.
to
Bar.
satisfy the relevant sensors
We
and
could.
drive the correct inference. To paraphrase Morpheus, some rules can be bent, others can be broken. For example, many of you will get to experience the demo of the latest iteration
I
of the
think
Rift,
Facebook's planning to
Crescent Bay,
use
during
us
F8.
all as batteries to
When you
power
do,
their aircraft
I'm
carrier
confident
data
that most of
centers.
you will
Do you feel like
you've
much
been
progress has been made with the Rift since
virtual
Developer
world.
Unit 2? He
Like
says
you're
we're going to see a new
literally there.
version, but
And yet, when you're
Hard to
using
say.
Crescent Bay, you're looking at photons coming from pixels strobed at 90 hertz, rather than photons continuously arriving from real-world surfaces and lights. That works because the period
90
during
hertz,
which the
that's
receptor
interesting.
fields on the retina accumulate photons is about 20 milliseconds. And the structure of those
High
fields
frame
is
rate
such
does make a
that they
difference in
respond
the
just as
perceptual
well to the photons arriving in
effectiveness
several
of
short
VR.
bursts as they do to them arriving continuously from real-world surfaces. Drop the frame rate to 60 hertz, however, and those same receptor fields will start to detect flicker. Drop it to 10 hertz, and motion will cease to appear smooth. In fact, Crescent Bay's display system differs from the real world in many ways. But by taking advantage of the physiology of the visual system, it nonetheless produces the desired signals to the brain.
getting frame rates over about
So part of
70
making
or
virtual
75
reality
frames
work
per second
is
makes a
learning how
huge
our
difference in
sensors
terms
can
of the
and can't be
nausea
driven to send the
effect.
right
Yeah.
signals to the brain.
Makes it
The
feel
other,
much more
less
stable.
obvious part is learning what it takes to get the brain to make a desired inference. For example, remember this?
Really?
We were able to get the brain to infer a face shape and the corresponding head movement by leveraging the convexity assumption. The same sort of thing is required
Well,
in a general sense in order for VR to work.
Of course, you have
And
to
the
be
key
able to
that
leverage the
is
convexity
agreement between
assumption. That's
multiple
not
sensors
gotta leverage-
non-trivial.
you gotta leverage the
reality,
convexity assumption.
especially when it involves feedback loops. For example,
You don't hear the word
without
convexity a
revealing
lot.
too much for those of you who haven't experienced it yet, for many people, the
By
defining
the way,
moment
the
of
high
Crescent Bay
frame rate
demo
is not an
is
easy
finding
thing to
themselves
do
on the
in a
edge of
game.
long drop.
Yeah.
It's one thing to do in a
response is
demo
often
where you
grab a nearby virtual
pre-rendered
pipe,
it.
which shows that enough unconscious inference is kicked in.
But
to
that's
trigger
one of the
automatic
challenges,
responses
to
that
get
mean
that
the- means the
75,
brain
80, 90
believes
frames per
someplace
second in a
real.
game.
Why does that happen? While the
Especially
scene
at
where
high
Neo
res.
climbs out onto a ledge outside a building and looks down 1,000 feet never makes anyone grab for support. The difference is that when you move your head in Crescent Bay, both the motion your vestibular organs report and the parallax your visual system report match the motor signals you sent in your neck muscles and your sense of
Crescent Bay is one of the
proprioception.
demos they've
That
been,
is your model
one of the
of
long-time
your
Oculus
body.
Rift demos.
And they do so with low enough latency so that your brain can fuse all those data points into a coherent model of the world. At the core of this is a feedback loop. You move your head, and what you see changes correctly and with an almost imperceptible delay, allowing your brain to maintain the same kind of model of the virtual world as it does for the real world, which then leads smoothly to further motion. That's the fundamental difference between movies and VR. Movies provide similar images, but with no feedback loop for head motion. As a result, we perceive movies as moving pictures on a flat surface, still firmly embedded in the real world. Good VR, in contrast, isn't perceived as pictures at all. It replaces rather than augments the real world. VR is about driving our perceptions the way they're built to be driven. If we can do that, it should be completely unsurprising that it enables us to create new realities. If the technology becomes good enough, VR should theoretically be able, in the limit, to create not only any experience that's possible in the real world, but any experience that we're capable of having. That's most certainly not the case today, as is obvious as soon as you reach out for that pipe and it's not really there. VR today is good enough to create experiences, but just barely.
Someday we'll
fact,
be able to create a
one
VR
reason
experience
the
where
future of
everything is
VR so
actually
bright
around
is
you.
that
That's
there are
right.
so
And when
many
you
ways
reach
to
out
get
and touch
much,
the pipe,
much
it's
better.
actually there.
right.
Let's take a quick look at some
Then
of
you
the
just
most
throw away the
important
helmet.
areas for improvement. Since we're talking about the pipe, let's start with haptics. The feedback loop I described earlier was about perceiving the world. The second key feedback loop is
Here's
the
the
one that
problem.
allows the
You're
use
wearing
of
it on
the
your
hands
head.
Yes.
as dexterous
All I can do is vibrate your
sensors and
head.
manipulators. Right now, Virtual interaction is
You're going to have
limited
to wear
data
gloves,
passing
too, if you're going to
lines,
make it.
which are
Exactly.
nothing like
This is the
way
problem
we
with virtual
interact in the
reality,
real world.
which is that
It's going to take
it's
time
so,
and
in
some
order to make it
breakthroughs,
truly immersive, it has
but
to
I
be
expect hands to eventually
has to be a lot of
capable in VR
infrastructure, which is
as
why
they are in
augmented
the real
reality is
world.
so good. If you
Right.
actually see
Because
real
you
objects,
you do see hands and pipes.
In terms of pixel density, field of view, dynamic range, image quality.
This is going to be great
variable
when we can
focus.
jack in.
And while
Yeah.
all that is improving,
And
form
I feel
factor and
that'll
ergonomics
happen
get a lot
at
better,
some
too.
point. You just alter
To
the
give you just
sensorium
one
directly.
example of how much better visuals can get, in order for Crescent Bay to deliver the same pixel density as a monitor at a normal viewing distance, it would have to have a
Now,
resolution
I actually
of about
wonder whether
5K
it will
by
cut
5K per
drug
eye.
use,
Something
because
like
people
20
who
times as many
want to
pixels as it
sort of
currently has.
Experience
are
distorted
bored or
reality.
whatever, taking
Yeah.
drugs,
Retinal resolution
you can go to any
across a
other
field of view of
kind of
180
fantasy world
degrees,
holodeck
it would
type
have to
of
have
thing.
something on
And
the
It's gotta
order of
feel
15K
something.
by
It's all about how it
16K
feels.
resolution. Roughly 200 times as many pixels.
This is an interesting point, and one of the
VR
real
audio
challenges
is
is
going to
the,
get a lot
the
better effects.
resolution has to be
Unlike most aspects of
5K.
VR,
Yeah.
no hardware breakthroughs are needed to make this happen. Just a lot of compute power and the
expense.
motivation to figure out how to bring audio spatialization and propagation to consumer products.
That's
And
I think
VR
a
creates
really
that
good point
motivation
is that none of this
in a big
is
way.
a breakthrough in technology. All of this is about getting the
VR,
costs
computer
down.
vision, and tracking
and
are going to
miniaturization
evolve
sufficient.
rapidly
You,
in a
you need
number
a
of
breakthrough
ways.
in financing.
Tracking
Yeah.
the human body is obviously critical.
And they got Mark
Virtual
Zuckerberg.
worlds won't seem fully real until you can see your own body. And you won't truly feel like you're sharing an experience with others until your brain accepts their avatars as people.
I think the jury's still out,
eyes,
at least in my
faces,
mind,
hands, and bodies.
about whether VR is the
I
next big
expect
thing or just
that
another
you'll also be able to
3D
pull the real
movie
world into
kind of
VR.
thing, just a gimmick.
You want to be able to import your coffee cup so you can pick it up without
At least
taking off
as
your headset. And ultimately,
presented today.
you want to be able to see your keyboard and mouse so you can use them in an infinitely configurable virtual workspace. Finally,
No,
you'll
I
be
don't
able
think
to map
people
your
want
surroundings
keyboards
so you
and
can
mice
stand up
in virtual
and walk
reality.
around.
Yeah, that would be.
Surprisingly little is understood.
Let's have a steam
about the
engine.
Right.
perceptual system.
I want a game
Even
where I
less is
simulate
known
doing the
about how to
dishes.
drive. It's easy for me to casually say that we'll be able
That's
to
why I've
use
never
our
taken
hands
to
as
driving
sensors and
games. It's like,
manipulators, but in
right,
fact,
plenty
the
of that,
science and
thank you.
engineering of that are embryonic.
Right, in my actual car, the
Almost all of
resolution
these
is
advances
amazing.
I described
Perfect.
Require much deeper understanding than currently exists, followed by radically new technology.
Gary in our chat room says
Why
the
am I
first
so
virtual
convinced
reality headset
VR
he
is
worked in
going to
VR
succeed
from
in this
VPL
time?
was 480 lines.
The first reason is that VR is already
Basically,
far enough along to
DVD
enable compelling
resolution.
experiences on consumer hardware, as Crescent Bay
I
makes
think
clear,
they have Oculus to
and will be
1080.
shipping
Do
in
they?
quantity before long.
Was 720 in the first
The
developer
second
version.
reason is that there are at least 4 major efforts to ship good consumer VR within a year or two. When Oculus, Samsung, Sony, and Valve/HTC are all jumping into a market, it's a pretty good bet that there's something important going on. The third reason is that developing better VR technology is hard and will require long-term
960 by 1080 per
Facebook's
eye, so yeah,
acquisition of Oculus
1080p.
was an important moment for this. Once that happened, there was no longer any doubt about whether VR would get the runway it needed to fulfill its potential. The final reason is the march of technology. This was my first computer, a 4 megahertz Z80-based vector graphics VIP system, for the bargain price of $6,000.
I had a North Star Advantage,
Pretty
looked just
sweet,
like that. It's awesome.
It didn't have a floating point unit, so let's generously estimate it at 7 kiloflops. NVIDIA just announced the Titan X, a desktop graphics card that
Doing many
delivers 7
gigaflops.
teraflops, a
Teraflops.
performance increase of about 1 billion times in about 33 years.
That's awesome.
That's how technology marches forward when there's competition and a compelling reason, and that's what's going to happen with VR. In short, a lot of powerful forces are coming together right now to make VR happen. And with that, we've come to the end of our lightning tour of why VR has the potential to be a unique
Lightning tour? Was that a
transformational
lightning
technology
tour?
And why I think it's
And
going to take
I'm
off
really-
over the next few years.
I don't think that's what we did,
So what
but
does it all mean? Cypher summed it up nicely. It means buckle your seatbelt, Dorothy, because Kansas is going bye-bye.
All right, that's one too many
Every
Matrix
decade or
references.
so, Kansas goes bye-bye in the digital world, and everything changes. Over the past 50 years, that progression has taken us from mini computers to personal
Virgil
computers.
points out that
GUIs to the
NVIDIA
web,
card has
to the
12 gigabytes of
so what's
VRAM.
next? It probably won't surprise you that
that's
I think
ridiculous.
VR is the leading candidate to be the next entry in that table. And maybe even more than that. VR is more than just another platform. In the long run, it has the potential to create the whole range of human experience. And while it'll be a very long time before all of that potential is fulfilled,
I see some real human factor issues with VR.
The shift to virtual reality is going to bring huge changes, both for us as developers and for society as a whole.
I can see gamers loving it.
Think about the
But
implications
gamers are used to spending a lot of money on gear to make their games more
being able to
immersive.
experience whatever you want.
Well, I mean,
with
that's
anyone
actually
in
an
the
interesting
world,
point. The
in
vast
any
majority of
space you can
gamers are
imagine.
not, in fact,
It's clear
console
that VR has
gamers.
the
They're
potential to
casual
change
gamers.
almost everything
And
about the way we
Well, they're
do
not
the
interested.
majority of people who play games aren't willing to invest.
Lots of
in
important
No, it's
anything, but
PC
the
gamers
hardcore people,
primarily,
no,
not
absolutely
even
will.
console gamers.
Motion mechanisms or input conventions.
That's
let
the
alone
market,
how VR
PC
movies
gamers.
will work, or what the equivalent of the Facebook wall will be, or what kind of games people will want to play in VR, or most important, in my opinion, how people will want to interact virtually with each other.
I think this
For
is
all
a
that, we
fairly
have figured out
disappointing
a process that will
keynote,
open up huge
as yesterday's was.
And all of us in
Essentially,
this
they could
room
have said
are
nothing
lucky
new to
enough
report. We're
have a
working
chance to
hard
be a part
in
in
behind the
making it
scenes, and we think we'll have something for you later
The
this year.
interesting question is how long it'll be
It was
before
mostly
you
a bunch of
personally
optical illusions
decide to make the jump
and
to VR.
literally zero information
you'll wanna be on
in
the
this
leading
particular
edge.
keynote about
you'll wait for the
Oculus
technology
VR
to
as a,
prove itself.
as a platform or
But VR is
Oculus Rift as a
potentially
product.
world-changing and
The
incredibly
previous
cool.
speaker, the
And it's really
CTO,
happening.
mentioned that
Yeah,
it's
it's
coming
something
this
to say.
year,
Sooner or later,
Yeah.
you
but that's
will
not
want to be
even
a part of it.
unofficial.
This was a lot of
announcement.
hand waving, is really what it was.
Yeah.
It's
Thank you.
we're doing something here, really.
Yep.
Very disappointing. I would have liked to have seen at least something more. I guess if you go to the teleportation booth, that's what you're seeing there. You can at least try the new version of Oculus VR. That concludes the second of two keynotes from Facebook's developer conference, F8. Not really a whole lot to report, and I think maybe that's what Facebook wanted. Certainly on day one yesterday, the message was developers were providing a stable platform for you. We're not going to change a lot. Here's the benefits, and we hope you will continue to adopt.
Yep.
A little more disappointing today. I think we were hoping at least to see something innovative and new, and it's really the same story once again from Oculus.
Yeah, they've been stringing us along for a long time about Oculus. I know it's got to be a very difficult problem, but they've been talking about it and hyping it for a long, long time. And so that's why I think we had some pent-up demand for some real information. Give us something about Oculus, something, anything.
Well,
but
put
they gave
yourself
us nothing.
in the developers' seat. I mean, this is a developers conference. What they would like to see is more information about how to develop for Oculus, what we need to do, how could we get ready. They have an SDK, but sure. I think that it's extremely challenging to do 90 frames per second of a real video game.
Yeah.
And they didn't demonstrate, and they didn't. Maybe in some of the panels later in the day, they'll show people what the hardware that we don't even know what they're going to sell at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Is it maybe just more of this? I mean, this is a fairly affordable device, just a few $100. The Gear VR from Samsung, but it requires a very expensive Note 4 or S6. That's where all the hardware is. That's where all the work is. And it's really just demo level. It is not an immersive game situation. Right. So I think we're just going to have to, the question marks remain on Oculus Rift, and we'll see what happens. Facebook's probably just sticking to their knitting, and this is a blue sky thing for them.
Yep.
Thank you, Mike Elgan. Thank you all for joining us. And what's next? Know-how. Father Robert and Brian Burnett. Mike will be back on tomorrow, 10 a.m. Pacific with TNT.
Either bright or early.
And I'll be back Saturday with the Tech Guy. Thanks for joining, and iPad Today with Sarah Lane. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on TWiT.